You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram.
Hello, I'm Gideon Haigh, and you're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast.
Let's talk about our next topic, Gideon, the state of Australian cricket. And Australian cricket has presented many challenges over the years. It's encountered many challenges over the years. What happened with Australia in Cape Town, of course, ball tampering, the whole Justin Langer situation, which wasn't handled all that greatly. Domestic cricket is got some problems and issues in terms of the states. Some teams are at higher levels, others are struggling, and that women's cricket.
It was ever thus, Jack. I mean, states have periods of strength and weakness. I guess it's perhaps slightly more problematic that New South Wales has been weak for the last couple of years, because traditionally it's been a great nursery of Australian batsmen. Certainly, and of course it's produced Australia's first choice pace attack. But these things ebb and flow. Not everyone will remain strong forever. In fact, in some ways, it's quite good. Certainly where women's cricket is concerned, that New South Wales is no longer hegemonic. It's great to see the WNCL and the women's BBL being shared around. That's actually what you want. I actually used to think it was a problem that New South Wales was so dominant. I'm sort of in some ways glad that phenomenon has gone the way of, in exactly the same way as it should. So, I mean, look, the problems for Australian cricket are, I think, perhaps more at grassroots level than elite cricket there will always be 11 good players to represent Australia. Where we get them from will be interesting. Cricket faces a number of threats to its popularity from alternatives. I think in some ways that the club cricket around which I grew up has changed unrecognisably in my time in the game. In some ways for the better. I think it's a more inclusive and a more open game. I think it's a more creative game. It actually has to work harder in order to attract people, and that's no bad thing. But access to the game is a problem, I think, for everyone involved. Cities are growing in crazy madcap ways where not everyone has equal access to recreational facilities. Cricket's struggling to keep pace with the changing demographics of Australia. I think every sport is. I think as far as the international calendar is concerned, there is a dismay in the public about the fact that it changes every summer. It's something I hear regularly from readers. They no sooner make plans for one summer than the next summer is completely different. I think cricket has historically been quite a conservative game. It's relied on a pretty conservative fan base, and traditional fans now feel as though they're being taken for granted and even neglected by the cricket authorities. That's a shame, but we can also succumb to that idea that the past was always great, and we used to have everything that we wanted. We've always found reasons to complain about cricket, and I'm kind of old enough to remember that.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess many people have their own opinions and won't be happy with certain things about, how come we don't get this test match, or, for an international tour, because the fixture was released a few days ago. And some people talked about that, Adelaide not happy about, having a day test rather than day-nighter, and that's going to be played at the Gabba.
I'm more amazed that there isn't more consternation about the fact that we're getting the West Indies again.
Yeah, but to me, to be honest, I'm not really. I'm always excited for cricket, to be honest, because I'm a cricket lover and tragic. But next summer to me doesn't feel much as exciting or or something like that to me, really, because we just played the West Indies last summer, and they're struggling, as we know, and they used to be a force in cricket, obviously, back in their dominant eras and days. And then Pakistan is a team that's a bit hit or miss. You never know what you're going to get with Pakistan.
Always
And you
struggle
think
on
Australia should win both Test series
road.
next summer. You would think that because they're far stronger and better. But it's just the way the calendar is, really, the international schedule and how the ICC
Well,
do
it
the
is.
Future
We're
Tours
also
program.
going back to what we discussed earlier, Jack, which is the acute inequality between countries now. Yeah, I mean, the West Indies always traditionally punched above its weight in international cricket. I mean, it's a tiny area, small economies, geographically isolated, problematic time zone for broadcasting into India, high cost base because of the necessity to fly between islands, relatively small audiences. So it was amazing, frankly, what West Indies cricket was able to accomplish in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. In some ways, it's probably reverted to roughly where it should be, relatively speaking. But there is something just awfully sad and lamentable about its sorry state, and frankly, that poor governance, lack of strategic thought, is principally to blame for that, and Australia is complicit in that neglect. So in some ways, we're getting exactly what we deserve.
Yes, it is a very sorry state to see countries struggle, and who once were powerhouses of cricket like the West Indies. Everyone talks about the West Indies of the 70s and 80s and how they won everything and never lost a series for a very long time, and then they started to decline. And last summer, you could just sort of predict what the results were going to be when Australia played those two Test matches against it, and probably the same against South Africa as well.
Yeah.
They struggled as well, and they lost a couple of tests by an innings. I think they lost, a couple of tests by an innings, and then Sydney got washed out.
And of course, by now South Africa's barely playing. They've got two
yes,
tests for the next 4
they're not
years.
really playing any Test cricket for the next 4 years, which is how you're going to improve as a Test side if you don't play.
Basically, we are destroying every single Test country apart from the big three, and that's just deplorable and completely foreseeable.
Yes, and many countries don't play 4 or 5 game Test series anymore. They either play 3 or 2 because they don't earn much money.
I don't want to watch a 5 Test series with the West Indies. But we've helped make them dreadful.
Yes, it's just the ICC, the administrators, and that probably not thinking about the greater interests of the game and just sort of neglecting the game, really, because we're grateful.
It was never part of their mission to think about the game. They were representatives of their countries. They weren't representatives of the game. There's something fundamentally amiss about the governance model, where directors of the ICC simply turn up and assess themselves according to the spoils that they're able to deliver to their own constituency. It's a colossal fiduciary failing. We should have had an independent board for the ICC 10 years ago. But as it is, we've just ended up with a job lot of political hacks and parochial nobodies. And like I said, we're getting what we deserve.
Yes, but let's hope that the game can be here for many years to come, Gideon, for our children and their children to enjoy.
Well,
like we
some
have.
form of it will be, Jack, and my form of it will be, and the form of cricket that I play will still be here. It will change. It will change more slowly because we don't have the external economic forces that are constantly bearing on us. And no one wants to buy the Yarras and turn us into a for-profit entity. We're playing because we love it, and that's the best reason to play it, frankly. I think most players play it now because they do love it and they happen to get paid for it as well. But we have no other impetus. We have no other There's nothing else shaping the decisions that we make. If we don't want to play, we don't have to. So that's a good way to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we can't get worked up over anything that we can't control. Really, we can't control how the ICC go about their business.
No,
We
I don't
can
know,
only,
Jack. I'm fucking furious.
yeah. As fans, we should be furious about, because governing bodies are meant to do what's right for the game and to make sure it develops all around the world and in different countries, of course. And cricket is growing in different countries, like the USA. They're doing Major League Cricket and wanting to expand that. And but when there's money and there's all that other stuff.
The great problem for the fan is, of course, that the only way that you have of expressing your indignation is by not watching the game, and that's a form of self-penalty.
Yeah.
So really, you're stuck with the status quo and a worsening status quo, frankly.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I hope you enjoyed listening to Gideon and I talk about the state of Australian cricket. If you want to listen to Gideon's cricket podcast, etc., with fellow cricket writer Peter Laylor, the links to that are in the description of this episode.